Awesome. So we'll give it about 30 seconds or so and then officially kick things off because we're still waiting for people to join us. Okay. I haven't done this yet today. This is my first one. I've been behind the scenes in my sweatshirt.
I feel you.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey everyone. So it's really good to see you guys. Thank you so much for coming out to Startup Boston Week. My name is Stephanie and I am one of the organizers for the event. So currently, to kick things off, we have a lot of sessions going on, about 80 sessions in total this week. So as a result, a lot of them are happening at the same time. So as you can see on the screen here, there's a few other sessions happening right now. Currently, you are watching Scaling Up, How to Create an Amazing Product Team. But if you did want another one, I won't be too offended. I mean, you know, the panelists might be slightly offended, but otherwise you can just click that agenda button at the top and then just click join next to the appropriate session if you were looking for something else. Otherwise, as we wait for a few more people to trickle in, just a few quick reminders. We love that, you know, you came here to learn, but also build connections. So if you are looking to build connections, please, you know, feel free to use that session chat over to your right sidebar, throw in your LinkedIn, or you can use the messages tab over next to it and then one-on-one message people. That's totally okay as well. And then lastly, if you have questions as they pop up, we are all here about the questions and to answer the questions and to make sure you know what to do. So click that Q&A tab over to the far right. And that way Kieran can see the questions and she can make sure that we get you some answers today. All right then. Well, I know that you guys didn't come here to listen to me. So now that we have a good crowd of about 80 or so people here, I'm going to pass the imaginary microphone over to Kieran. So Kieran, please take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. We're all so excited to be here. Thank you all for joining us. This session is how to create an amazing product team. And with that, we have some amazing people here on the panel. We have Neil, Sal, and Alex. I'm going to do a quick introduction for myself and then ask you guys to quickly drop your roles, the work that you do. If you're a CTO, if you're a product analyst, UX designer, who are you? The panel really wants to know what your day-to-day role is. Feel free to drop that. I'm Kiran Panjwani. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of a company called DM. We are a digital accelerator to help bring inclusiveness for everyone who wants to work on their product to be able to get accelerator-like services online. I also work at a lab and I run the discovery for innovation at a retail company called Ahold Delhaize. So that's my day job, but I'm super excited to be here. I'm gonna pass the mic to Neil to introduce himself. And also, while all the panelists have their mics on, please also tell us what your superpowers are.
Great, thanks, Kieran. Hi, I'm Neil Karasik. I've been a startup product leader here in the Boston area for a really long time, most recently heading up consumer product at a company called Quotient Technology. You may know it as coupons.com, and also do some angel investing for TBD Angels. For superpowers, my product-related superpowers, I'm able to make people feel good about telling them no. That's a really good product superpower. And I'm able to separate message from delivery. So when my CEO tells me the presentation I've been working on for weeks is shit, I can take a step back and understand what he's really saying and not get angry about how he delivers the message. So I will pass it on to Alex.
Hi, Alex Wessner here. I've been in product management, product strategy for about 20 years now. Most recently started a company in the hearing loss space, which is interesting and exciting and fun. And my superpower would be, people tell me I'm kind of even keeled and that I don't get rattled, I don't get upset, and that I'm kind of present and helpful. I like that. I'll be chill.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sal. I've been in the Boston area for about 20 years. I've worked at a number of different startup companies. And I've also worked at a number of large companies like IBM and Pearson. I'm a product manager and product strategy person. I have two superpowers, one being a sense of empathy. And I think that for all product managers, it's a good superpower to have because you want to empathize not only for people that you're working with, but also with the customer. Secondly, my superpower is being a restorative person. I like fixing things up, and it's my nature to really dig in and try to solve problems. So I can fix anything.
That's awesome. That is amazing. We have some people writing back to us. We have a product owner, senior PM. We have early stage recruiting, career management in there as well. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So product, it's a small word with big superpowers in itself, and it can mean so many things. So let's start our conversation today with what does product mean to each of you individually? And then we'll talk about what is an amazing, and while you're there, tell us what an amazing product means to you. So maybe we'll start with Alex this time and hear more about what product means to you.
Cool, thanks. Good question to kick it off. We could talk about this for an hour.
Yes.
But product, I think, well, the reason why I got into product management, product strategy was just, I mean, it's interesting to create a solution for a problem, but to do that in a way that is a more compelling solution than existing solutions out there for a customer that they're willing to pay you for, that it costs you less to make than the money you get from it, meaning you can be profitable. Like all of that to me is part of thinking about what product is. I think it can't just be the physical or virtual thing that you create for someone. I think it has to encompass the entire holistic view of what the business is. So I tend to kind of conflate product and business a lot in my thinking about what product is.
Amazing. You're essentially jack of all when you're working in or building a product. You're trying to do everything at the same time. That's great. Sal.
Yeah, I agree with Alex that there definitely has to be a focus on the business, especially the P&L from product. I think I'd like to expand also that in my experience, a lot of companies have differing viewpoints of what product is and what the product team is supposed to do. And so I think definitely that's a universal truth that product should be responsible for improving P&L. But also some companies may have a more technology focused or engineering management focused view of product, while others may lean more towards product marketing and a marketing perspective of, what is the right product market fit. And I think that every company varies. And at startup companies, certainly, I think that there's a broader range. And so answering that question for yourself as a startup is really important to understand who you're hiring and what the right fit is. So that's kind of my perspective on that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think Sal and Alex have covered a lot. In addition to that, what I'll add is, it's solving that problem and, with those real world constraints, but it's also marrying it to the vision, whether it's the founder's vision or your own vision if you're the founder, and so that it's not a static snapshot of creating a thing that exists now, but be able to solve that problem and see the future as to what's going to continue to solve that problem better or solve more adjacent problems. So, in addition to those things, I think it's also a marrying that to the vision of the company or the vision of the product.
Absolutely. And I think one of the superpowers that most entrepreneurs have or want to have is being able to see what's coming up in the future so that they could resource their company properly and bring in the right people at the right time. And that's a big question, right? Like, when do I hire my first person? who should they be, and what skill sets should they bring. A startup is essentially like a baby that keeps growing out of the clothes that you buy for them. Would love to hear from either of you what you guys feel as to who your first role should be, how you should pick that, how do you recruit for C-level?
Yeah, I'll jump on that first. So it depends. No, that's it. That's the whole answer. No.
Bye.
And I'm talking sort of from a founder's perspective. When to bring on the first product hire. The things that it primarily depends on are the founder skills. Whether they're a product focused founder or whether they're sales or marketing or engineering focused founder. The type of product. It's way more important to bring on a product person early for a scaling consumer product than an API or technical product. And then, the stage of growth, are you, just, drawing your product on the back of a napkin, in which case, you don't need to bring that product person on necessarily yet. But by the time you've achieved product market fit and want to throw fuel on the fire, it's probably too late. So, it's somewhere in there. And, the qualities that you're going to look for early stage especially is somebody who's done it before at an early stage company and done it successfully and has a get it done attitude, whatever it takes. Like those, a lot of other things are important, but without those two things, you can't really have a successful product team. And so I'll hand it over to the other folks to comment.
Yeah.
I would add, I think it's also important to there's a fit between the founder skills and their background and when to hire product. And so I've worked with co-founders one of which was a product guy. And so hiring product was actually kind of on the bottom of his list. I've also spoken to more of a sales oriented founder who was definitely interested in bringing in more of a product view, even before technical, just because to have that kind of liaison to sort of translate. Personally, because I'm more of a product person, I think I would probably wait to bring on product in my own startup because that's kind of my comfort role. So I think it actually is, you're building to complement the skills and people you don't have.
Absolutely. Very well said. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah. There's, I think Alex and Neil are very comprehensive there. I think just to reinforce Alex's point that there's, the founders typically have a vision in mind and already have product expertise. And so part of the challenge of hiring in early product folks, and for early product folks, the challenge is typically what is that relationship like with the founders, and how do you avoid conflict, and what is a good complementary skill set? And so I think for early product managers, we have to be cognizant of what the product founders are already trying to do, and to work with them, and to I think that's a potential challenge and a place where there could be friction, and that needs to be managed. It's people who start startups always have a vision. They're not starting a startup without a vision. So really, it's early products folks' job to realize that vision and to work alongside that. And there's going back to the earlier point around what is the business model, and that tends to be where a lot of the friction occurs and needs to be managed.
Absolutely. So this is some great information. So we look for stage, and we want to bring someone in essentially before you're trying to execute on everything. Qualities and skills, as Neil said, someone who has a getting it done attitude and has done it before, right? You don't want someone who's never done it before and they're leading you into it as well. And then fit, I feel, is one of the major things that all of you have mentioned, is there has to be a fit between the founding team and the person that you're bringing on. And the vision, how do you as a founder take that vision and pass it on to the person you're hiring and bring it to them as well, is so important. And having said that, how do you pass that, right? Like, so let's get into the details of actually doing that. What does it take? When do you own? What do you own, and what do you not own? If you're a, like Alex is a product person, he's like, I know product, so I'm going to bring in someone else. But if Alex has to expand his product capacity, how is he going to divvy up that work? So Alex, if you want to talk to more about how do you divvy up the work?
I thought you guys were going to help me answer that. That's
Yeah, absolutely. In your experience, when you've done it previously, you're bringing on more people on your product team, and others feel free to chime in.
Boy, I mean, I think from what Sal was just talking about is that it starts with the vision. And so when your vision is clear and your initial phases of where you are as a company are clear, that's when your next hire becomes more prominent, just sort of jumps off the page, right? It's like, okay, here's my vision, here's what I'm trying to get, and I'm in this phase now. The way I get out of this phase is by creating a really amazing prototype I'm going to be able to test with customers and attract more investors and prove out some technical risk. And so, then it's who is the person to lead that to accomplish those goals. So I think, yeah, I would sort of go back to, Sal's thinking about integrating the vision into the process.
Yeah, I guess, if you flip the perspective a little bit, I'm a PM looking at PM roles, and what I see is a lot of job postings, and all the job postings are sort of similar, and they describe what they're looking for. The job postings say, okay, we're looking for people who can prioritize, and the question that they're going to ask in the interview is like, what is your prioritization technique? And the PM interview is very, very standard, but in fact, what people are looking for are complementary fits, and each situation is completely unique, and people have varying gaps. So if you're looking for somebody who is more focused on technical and engineering management, then your job posting should be oriented at that. It should explicitly say that, hey, look, what we're looking to do is to find somebody who can relay requirements to the technical team. And from a fit perspective, that's what you're looking for. And as a founder, you have to kind of know thyself, understand what type of PM you're looking for, and put that into the job description and hire for that, interview for that. So it really needs to knowing yourself is kind of the way that you hire the best people.
That's a great point. So knowing yourself, if we could focus on that for a minute, because we're so into the work we're doing, we're so passionate about it. Is there a way that you could help early stage founders, or how you went through the process of, how do I know what I know? And that's one of the biggest fields where we stumble upon. We think we can do it all till everything comes to us at the same time, and then we are sort of crumbling and burning out doing the job.
Yeah, I mean, the best founders that I've worked with, maybe when they're pitching to customers or investors, they seem like they have no doubts and a big ego. But when they come back to the office, they're humble, and they take knowledge from customers, from employees, from peers, from folks outside the company, from mentors, and those are the best, to me, the best founders, where that's the essential quality, that they know what they don't know, and they're willing to go out there and expand their knowledge or bring people on to do those jobs. I think going back to bringing a product person on your first product hire, I think that first product hire has to have similar process, where they don't come in thinking they know it all. Even if they've done it before, this is going to be a new company, a new domain, and you want a generalist, but you also want them to know that they're not an expert at UX if they're not, or they're not a visual designer, because almost certainly they're not. And they know when to bring those folks on, and not, they know which balls to carry and which balls to hand off.
I would add something to on the thread that Neil started on humility. I mean, that's really important, and it is tricky to get feedback as a sort of a leader or a founder. And so what I've learned is outside feedback can be amazing. So if you don't have mentors, find mentors like right now. I've had the best challenging conversations, like personally challenging conversations from mentors, because they don't care. I mean, like, to be honest, like, they have no filter of trying to protect you. Like, it is their job as a mentor to really challenge you and to challenge you on what you think you know and what you don't know. And they have the outside pair of eyes to be more objective. So I've had personally the best feedback from like outside mentors than people within an organization.
Or coaches as well, right? So
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think this was a really important point. Like, before you go outside and hire someone, you really need to know who you are, and your mentors and your coaches can really help you get in line with who you are and what it is that you need to grow this company. So you go from vision, goals, phases, phase by phase growth, and then you go into understanding who you are, and then you decide how you want to hire more people. So coming to hiring more people, you don't always have to have someone on your books hired. That begs the question of outsourcing a task or a project or a piece of your product or your baby. How do you do that? How do you decide this is worth outsourcing versus bringing someone in full-time for? There's so many things out there like fractional CFOs, and I've been hearing about COOs that can be borrowed for quick operational tasks. What are your feelings about it?
I can start this one. So sure. For me, it's you can outsource when the task that needs to get done is more of a commodity, more of a, here's a spec, here's a list of tasks that need to get done. You can outsource that work. What you need to be close to your own core is the new IP that you're creating and the differentiators and what's new and special about your company. You need to keep that really close to your own team. But when you get to the point of doing all that discovery work with customers and testing and learning, and then you get to the point of, okay, now we're building a thing, and it's not just iterating on, in an agile way, whether it's software or hardware. We know exactly what it is. I think there's a point where you can certainly outsource large chunks of work. And I'm going through that now, especially as a hardware company. I can't hire all of the hardware expertise I need to build a complicated electronics product. So I have to outsource a lot of that work. And so there's a lot of work to find the right outsourcing partners, which I'll pause there. We can get back to that.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, after you, Neil.
Yeah, I think Alex had a lot of good points there where, it's this balance between how quickly can you get it done by bringing on a consultant or a contractor, and how important is the core IP that's going to exist at the end of the, project. So there are things that more naturally fall into that area, like consumer research, for example, where, you may be launching a new product and you need somebody to do the in-depth interviews and run the beta and, do the, collect the feedback, things like that. That makes perfect sense to outsource, because once the thing launches, maybe you'll look to do a full-time hire in that area and you won't have lost core IP. Sometimes visual design or UX falls in there earlier stage. If you're a consumer company, though, you really want that in-house, because that becomes part of your, your core, what makes up your company. And, one thing I'll add is, in the age of COVID and remote, it's sort of works better than ever to have contractors or consultants work on your projects, because they feel like they're more part of the team, because they're kind of on equal footing with everybody else. So I kind of urge folks who have an older model of whether to work with contractors and consultants to update it, because I feel like it works better than it ever has.
Yeah, and I just like to extend Neil's point about time to market as well, which is that's a key factor for product, especially proving out ideas early, and being able to outsource may buy you some speed to test out your ideas and just get to market with a product. Now, it may not always work. Like, the hardware game that Alex is in works a little bit differently and has very long development cycles. But for software, anyways, that makes a lot of sense.
And I would just add to all of that, it can't be a specific. There can't be a generalization on what's outsourced. I mean, like we've said before, like every company is different. Every goal is different of where you are right now. And so it has to be, it has to depend on where you are and what you're doing. You can't just say like Neil suggested, outsourcing customer research at a certain point. There, I could also imagine a phase where you would want to, that might be a core part of what you need to do as a founding team rather than outsource. So I think it's good to have it as a lever. I also agree with Neil saying that there's been sort of a bias against it, and especially for startups, and that outsourcing is sort of like you're sort of pushing IP or you're pushing something away from the company, and that's kind of lost to you. But it's definitely can be an accelerator if you use it properly.
Absolutely. So the answer is it depends, guys.
Always.
I think Neil answered all our questions with that 2-word answer. Everything is it depends. But the power of this panel is to help you understand in which scenarios you can use, because it depends on the scenario that you're in. What do you bring to the table, what phase you're in, how you want to grow, whether you're a consumer product company or a B2B company. And with that, you would decide whether you want to keep research of some kind within or outsource it. Having said that, there's a lot of discussion of like, what is the importance of engineers and technical teams as stakeholders? Like, how important is it to have the voice of an engineer or a technical team as part of, or for them to have a seat on the table with the product vision? I see Sal nodding his head. So
yeah, I'm really passionate about this, especially in software. I don't think that you can build great products without having engineering and architecture and designers, having everybody have a seat at the table. And I think the broadest view of when it comes to stakeholders and input and trying to take in all of this input, and that really, to me, is the role of a product manager, is to understand, not only the market, but what all the stakeholders want, and to balance all of those needs and to put it in a product. I really believe in the methodology that was kind of laid out by Netflix, and in the book Powerful by Patty McCord. She talks a little bit about the Netflix approach, and the example there is that they sent their engineers off to Sundance Film Festival to understand the entertainment business, to understand media and the drivers there. And I really think that in order for software developers and engineers and architects and everybody to understand the business and to empathize with the end customer, that they really have to have that level of understanding. And it's a product management job to foster that level of understanding of the business across the team.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and it's so important. I've worked in organizations where engineers are kind of the last downstream stop of solution, and sort of get things thrown at them. And I've been in organizations where engineering and product are equal partners in solving problems, but of course different aspects of it where there's natural tension, and by leaps and bounds the latter works better than the former. And we're talking about some examples of getting engineers having a stake. Number one is just making it explicit. Like, both of our jobs are solving the customer's problem, period, end of story. We have more of a market focus, you have more of a solution focus, but we both have an equal job. And then another piece of it is giving engineers, not just the CTO or not just the VP of engineering, but give other engineers exposure to clients and customers in a way that makes sense for the size of your company. So it might be, looking at videos of customers using your product, or it might be sitting in on a client meeting, or it might be answering customer service tickets. They're all different kinds of ways to give engineers empathy. Don't make it their job, because that's not their job, but you have to give them touch points and the ability to do it. And what I found again and again is that by doing that, the engineers get much more vested in solving that problem, much more creative, and just do a better job.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. We have a lab at work, and we have tech teams and design teams. And when they get together, the solutions that they create are just out of this world. You're like, you can't sit alone and build something in a silo. And working together with teams is so important. That brings me to a point that that's about conflict, right? I mean, all of you here have had have a team. How do you resolve conflicts, and what is the best practice in terms of bringing people to the table and building that amazing product team, right? Like, how do you set that that line to say, this is the culture we're going to work on, and how do you as a founder set that, bringing in your first hire, second, expanding that team? Sal seems like he's going to be answering that one.
No, I'll let Alex go first.
Alex is like, I don't know if I want to answer it.
Conflict. It's funny because if there is no conflict, then people aren't collaborating. So
Absolutely.
There's like the what is it? The form, storm, norm, perform. Your team starts together, but there has to be the conflict in order for them to sort of work through something. And if there isn't, then they're not collaborating. They're just sort of being careful around each other. So in a way, it's how do you create creative conflicts is sort of an interesting reframing of that question. I feel like it's more of an art than a science. I can only remember, a couple of times when I've had to help resolve conflicts, and sometimes it's like couples therapy sessions, and sometimes it's it can be so many things. But I think the thing that helps is culturally you can set the tone that that it's okay to have conflicts. Like, we can't avoid them. You have to be free to voice opinions and be wrong and be right and challenge each other. So it's really about, like, how do you create a culture of respect and one that can challenge? Is it's hard. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, a bunch of companies that I've worked for have the same philosophy, which is feedback is a gift. And so I think, starting with that premise, I think you make that the norm. And so, it does give people license to give feedback that something isn't working, or, the relationship between two people or two organizations has to change. And I think that helps, just setting the expectation that that's going to happen. I do think also with more junior members of the team, to my superpower before, you have to let people know that they do have to separate the message from how it's delivered, and think about, because people have a tendency, see Twitter, to take a message, in the most negative kind of connotation. And, you have to look at it and do the opposite. Look at it and say, I imagine that this was delivered with the best intention, right? With the intention that the company improved, that the product improved, that the team's relationships improved. And if you think that way, even in cases when that's not true, if you think that that's true, it really helps kind of help people move forward and resolve conflict and get better themselves and, make better relationships.
Yeah, I agree with all that. If you don't have conflict, that means that you also don't have diversity of opinion, right? Like you're probably not making progress. Building a product is incredibly difficult. as we all know, and working together to identify features or to identify initiatives. It all comes with stress, and it comes with challenges because there's always going to be trade-offs in whatever you're doing. So these are all factors that lead to conflict, and you have to have conflict in order to be able to get through. And the idea is that the conflict doesn't adds to the value, and that, like Alex said, is constructive, is creative, and that you come out of it, and the human relationships are not harmed, but your discussions and these conflicts have led to some improvement or gain and have built a stronger product. So.
Yeah, and whether you're a product leader or a founder, that we talked about empathy before, when people know that you have a track record of listening, to what they say, to incorporating the information, to looking at, the data and making a decision, and if they agree with 60 or 70%, I think you're doing pretty well. The times they don't agree with you, they're going to know that you're still doing those things, and they're going to respect that, hopefully. And I think that it's, that's how you have a healthy organization. You have a lot of folks doing that. So you might think other people make a bad decision, but you do trust them. You trust their judgment. You trust their ability to do their job. And so, you get past the conflicts. The other very tactical point that I'll make about conflicts, it's very important that when decisions are made, that they're not constantly revisited and reopened, because then that is just multiplying unnecessary conflict. And it's very important to have a culture of, when a decision is made, that, the decision is made and you move forward. It doesn't mean you don't have a responsive organization and you can't revisit things at an appropriate time scale, but not every meeting, every status meeting, every week, you keep revisiting the decision from a month ago. I think that's an essential element of not making people think that there's constant conflict.
I think on that, I like what you're saying there on sort of moving forward. One technique that I've used and have seen used on that sort of make a decision and move forward, when that decision is being made in an environment where it's a contentious decision, a nice way to make the decision is also to put a gate on it or a KPI associated with it. So here's how we're going to do to move forward, and we're going to evaluate in 3 months how we're doing on that decision, and these are how we're evaluating it. These are the criteria, and we're hoping that this decision is going to lead to this outcome. And you sort of take all the personal stuff away, and you really remind everybody that this is a business decision or a product decision that's trying to achieve an outcome. So you set that outcome, and then you do actually measure if you've achieved it. And if you have, great, everybody's cool, move forward. If you haven't, then there's another chance. And I think people who might have opposed the decision at least can see, all right, I see how you're evaluating it. I'm getting behind it. And I also see that you're willing to be wrong in a way by setting a KPI that could be passed or failed. There's some kind of goes back to that humility aspect that we've touched on in a few different areas. It always comes back to that humility piece keeps coming back, which is interesting.
Absolutely. You want to hire for humility, empathy, and passion. And that's one of the biggest things that comes to the table. Passion brings conflict. People who have passion for the work they're doing will essentially want things to go in the way they see fit. And then that's how you have creative conflict I thought this was such a great piece of conversation. So setting expectation, creative conflict, building the culture of respect and trust, as well as contentious decision making, and then putting a KPI on it. I really like that piece where you're going to measure it and you're not going to revisit it every meeting. So that's amazing. That culture piece brings us to how do we set that base where we make sure our culture is addressing, or is not even addressing, from the start, is keeping in mind diversity, equity, and inclusion in our thoughts, how we hire, how we grow in our product, whether our product is more accessible to multiple people. How do you set that stage right from the get-go?
Yeah, I think going back to my earlier point, it's about knowing what you're looking for, knowing thyself. But when you have these gaps that are identified of things that you don't know, then hiring people in who are going to have opposing opinions and who are going to be able to fill those gaps. And I think that's the hardest part from a hiring perspective, because I think when you're building out a team, you're probably hiring people usually who are going to seem as if they're going to be easier to work with and more like yourself. And so that is, I think maybe the core of this is that, it really requires some amount of humility and some understanding of what your weaknesses are to be able to hire people who are going to provide those opposing strengths, and also that voice that you need to make the product stronger, to lead to the creative conflict and to grow your product.
Absolutely.
I think, Sal made some great points. It's so hard very early stage because you are just essentially hiring within your network and, within, 0, 1, and 2 degrees. So it's very challenging, but, make it explicit, I would say, is super important. Make it a part of your company values and publish them. Even when you're very small, make sure that, if your company, values are diversity and inclusion, our integrity, our, low ego, whatever that set is, publish them. I think it's important. And then as the company grows, people will know what they are. I think it's also tactically later on as the company grows, super important to do hiring and interview training. That I think a lot of people's default behavior around interviews is anti-diversity and inclusion, not just around, to Sal's point, like, is this someone I like, but around lots of other things, types of questions, how they look at a resume in terms of, what people's outside activities are. I mean, all kinds of things. And so it's just important to train people or untrain them in many ways, the way that they've done things in the past, and make sure they're interviewing for skills, that they're interviewing for, even, enthusiasm skills and charisma skills, if that's necessary position, or analytic skills, but not for things that aren't those skills. And there's lots, I think, especially within tech startups, there's lots of kind of introvert, extrovert, inclusion and exclusion that we do as well. And it's important that people think about, like, the different ways that they're missing out on opportunities to hire great people.
I love everything you both said. I would add one other potential lens, which is to think about your customer base. What's the makeup of your customer base? And think about how to align your own company culture and makeup to that of your customer base. Like, if you're going to be successful, you're going to do that by building amazing relationships with your customers. And so you need the people on your team that are also going to relate to your customers. And you want a diverse customer base. You want a lot of customers for your products, right? And so you need to sort of match your own culture to whom you're selling.
Absolutely. That was amazing. So we've learned that, it's okay to hire different from who you are. You got to set your values, publish them if you have to, as Neil said, and then untrain the people who are hiring so that they can hire for, diversity and not just that one skill. And then look at your customer base, right? You want to make sure there's representation on that table as you're discussing your product. That's amazing. I want to go into more stuff that we have, but we have 7 questions that have come in. And I would love to jump into those questions. So I think I can click this publish button. Oh, there we go. Stephanie had said that I could click the button. So here I am. So here's the question. What are good places or resources to use to recruit a creative tech team, very early stage with no financial background at this point? What are good ways to distinguish they are a good fit and want to stick around for the long haul? That's a good one. You want to hire for the long haul. So one of you guys can take the question, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I'll jump in, and I'm not sure when they say creative tech team. I'm assuming they mean it's an engineering team that is creative in terms of problem solving. And the very early stage with no financial backing, I assume you can pay those employees because the market for an engineer and for engineering talent is very, good for those folks right now. And so bringing people on with the promise of, of partnership or equity is going to be challenging, in this market. That doesn't mean you can't bring on a technical co-founder. For sure you can, but when you're actually talking about bringing on the team, that's going to be a challenge. The short answer is it's hard. There are recruiters that can be helpful. There are investors who, even if they're not invested in your company, like the local venture capitalists, who potentially can be helpful if folks are leaving another portfolio company who might be downsizing or shifting their focus. And then I know it's cliche, but honestly, your network, LinkedIn is an invaluable tool, to find resources of all kinds. And you're not going to build a 40-person tech team with any of those methods, but you can certainly make key hires that way.
One other point to add to that as well is that looking overseas, I don't think is a bad idea. I think there's a strong bias to keep things local for the longest time, and it still is. But across every industry that I've looked at, there's more and more work that happens offshore, and that creative work and even product management work. And there's very strong services partners that you can rely on that will be around for the long haul overseas. Now, I think that there's trade-offs to that approach, but I think it's a viable option for startups. We live in a global economy, and COVID has just made things more virtual, and there's less and less importance of being face to face. We're having a virtual conference here. This is a global conference because by virtue of the fact that it's virtual. So, I think working with people remotely and overseas is more compelling.
I'll just add, you might be able to find students, undergrads, grad students, postdoc maybe, but look into academia actually as a source of interested talent.
Absolutely. And I'd like to add one more. We hired someone in our technical team from Reddit. We were commenting on a post and they were commenting back. We're like, hey, you want to have a chat? And they're like, yeah, well, let's do a Zoom call. And suddenly we have our backend developer and he's working for equity. So it's all about convincing people. And if they want to solve the problem you're solving, they'll definitely want to come on board, whether it's something that they do on the side and not as a full-time job. That all boils down to how it pans out. So thank you so much for that question. Our next question is, how do you decide which new feature should be developed without falling for the shiny object syndrome? We've all been there.
To me, I think it's two things. I've heard product management referred to as product editing, and that the art of product management is really what to cut, not what to create. And I think if you have a rigorous discipline in customer validation and customer testing, it just makes prioritization so much easier. So if you're in a good routine of really talking to your customers in a way that is not biased, everybody should read the Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick. It's one of my Bibles. Then I think those sort of immediate top needs come out at the top.
Awesome.
I'm just trying to be quick.
Yeah.
I think both making sure your prioritization lines up with your vision, and that, to the extent that it's possible, publishing, what are kind of the big rocks that you're going after in the, next 3, 6, 12 months, however far out you're looking. But also what I found is really helpful is publishing that, and when you make changes, being very explicit about the trade-offs with the stakeholders. So it's not just the founder saying to product, hey, there's this new opportunity, get it done, or the head of sales. It's, what's the process for doing that is looking at what we're doing and making an explicit trade-off against it, or bringing on more resources or outsourcing it if it's that important. But it's just being explicit about it and not letting sort of the argument from authority win, because there's always the tendency to do that. And whether that authority is your biggest customer or the CEO or the head of sales or some, even head of product or engineering, make sure that there's some process. In the end, you're always going to have some founders or CEOs prerogative. That just can't be every day.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to is find ways to test your hypotheses. And that will help you avoid these cram down projects or the shiny objects or
100%.
other pitfalls.
Yeah, or scope creep, right? That always happens. We start with something and then we end up with something else. Having a product charter and a value of what you're bringing, having that at the forefront, as Neil said, publish it. Put it on your website. You'll stick to it. So, our next question. I'm going to press publish. For niche industries such as assistive technology for people with sensory disabilities, how do you balance hiring someone with experience versus hiring someone with enthusiasm? That's a big one. So do you hire for experience or enthusiasm?
My company is building a product for hearing loss. So both. You can do both. I know I'm not taking either choice. I think you can do both. I think you have to find people at an early stage who are enthusiastic. Like you have to, because it's going to be a challenging time. You're living with uncertainty and ambiguity, and it's a difficult game. So you have to have someone who's enthusiastic. But if you're trying to really grow the team and you want to grow quickly, you need the experience. I know I'm cheating to say both, but if I had to pick, I would actually go for enthusiasm over experience. I think early stage, a smart, passionate person can find a way to get the thing done because they can relate to the customer more, and they have the capacity for more empathy. And as Sal was championing earlier.
And I think, there are different levels of experience. In this case, it could be someone with the specific assistive technology experience. It could be at a different level, somebody with hardware experience. At a different level, somebody with, hardware, software interface experience. There's kind of different levels. If you go too many levels away, if you have a consumer software person trying to build hardware and assistive technologies, that's, no matter how much enthusiasm they have, that's almost certainly not going to be successful. It is possible, but really unlikely. So I think you have to, do that cross product of, how far up the sort of the chain do they go in terms of how close do they get to the specific technology, and how much enthusiasm and just general like intelligence and desire and all of those things, and mash it up in a ball and put it in the oven, and you're going to get a great product out of the end.
That's totally fair. I would say I've had conversations with potential investors who were less empathetic to the specific idea, but super interested in the technology and wanted to drive the technology in a direction. And for me, that's just kind of a non-starter. Can't have that. And so I think there is that. So you do, if the mission is important to you, and that's a big part of the company mission and vision, you have to find someone, you have to make sure that people respect that and honor that vision and the mission and the customer base. So I would say that's table stakes.
Yeah, I would advise Gary to hire what he doesn't have. So if he's got experience, hire the enthusiasm. But if he doesn't have experience, then he's going to need the experience.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. We have 7 minutes left, and we have about 4 questions left. So I'm going to publish the next one. How do you balance customer feedback versus product problem vision when innovating within a well-established industry, example, HR? Would you advise meeting people where they are or building for the future?
Neither. No, I don't mean to be flip, but it's kind of true, which is, building up through a line by line product backlog is never going to get you to be the top company or top product in your space. And so, it's really is about solving a problem that is, a widespread problem that's a valuable problem to solve. And that exists, as we've seen again and again with, like Zoom and all of these, online HR companies and, all kinds of things, that there is opportunity. If you can solve problems that exist today, you can win. And so it's the short, you have to talk to customers, you have to do all the things, but you can if you identify those problems in existing spaces, then you can build a great product and a great company. If the current players are solving all the problems in the space within HR, I find extraordinarily hard to believe, then great, don't compete. But they're not, and so find the problems they aren't solving and solve them, and you're going to win. And I know that that's also a little cliche, but it's not about talking to a customer and getting a backlog of features like, oh, I wish this this solution did X, Y, and Z. It's hey, we're spending way too much time still onboarding people. We can't bring remote people in other countries because the legal stuff is too much of a barrier. Like, look for the big problems to solve.
And just when you think you understand the problems, go back again and dig deeper. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. And we're going to go to the next question. Oh, we have Stephanie.
You can do this question, then we have to wrap it up. We're almost at time.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. So Caleb has a question. We're a bootstrapped small company, not yet cash flowing, to hire a product role. What are the high-level skills, resources, teams like us should use for product development up until they're ready to hire in a role? Very loaded question.
I mean, depending on, how much money there is, it says they're not, there's not cash flow, but, to Sal's point earlier, that's a great opportunity to outsource. To really get either your MVP or MLP or whatever version of the product that you need to either get money start coming in or to fundraise.
Should we hop on to the next question, since so we can get through get everyone some answers? Your take on product versus application. Any differences in how you form the team, and what specifically do you look for in a team? Oh, that's another loaded one. Guys, big questions.
My bias is to think about product, because the application is going to change from day to day, version to version. You might pivot, but product, like as I was trying to find it earlier, it's bigger than just, features in an application. So you need to think longer term.
Awesome. Okay. The next one is, what criteria do you use to identify a good salesperson for your startup product? Oh.
Enthusiasm.
Yes.
I'm going to chime in and say we have a whole slew of panels dedicated to hiring sales on Wednesday afternoon.
That's a great way for us to wrap this up. Thank you so much, everyone. It was such a pleasure hosting this panel. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you to everyone that attended.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. You guys did amazing. I learned a lot. And to everyone else, our next and final session for today is coming up in a few minutes. And otherwise, definitely log back in tomorrow. All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a good one. I'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.